Good morning, all. Dave Guresso, your purpose coach with Beacon Leaders. And today I want to talk to you about vulnerability as part of today's SALT University message. Vulnerability. So many of us struggle to really just be open and vulnerable with the people around us. And we're walking around just sort of wondering, why is everybody so closed off? Why is the world so cold? Today I want to challenge you to consider, are you being open and vulnerable? And for the demonstration today, as I talk to you about this, I want to show you a lock, right? People can be sometimes a lot like locks. What makes us unique is that we all sort of have a unique set of experiences, feelings, and thoughts that make us up. And for that reason, we are all very, very different. In the last video, we talked about embracing differences. But this time, I kind of want to share a secret with all of you. When you really zoom out from that, we're really not all that different. And here's what I mean. So a lot of times we think to ourselves, nobody's going to understand how I feel. Nobody's going to get what I'm going through. Or you might be thinking to yourself that, well, if I share this with them or I share that with them, they may no longer like me, or they'll make fun of me, or they'll say something about me, or if people really knew who I really was, they would never want anything to do with me again. But I want to challenge you to think a little bit differently about that. So as we look at our lock, right, we recognize that every lock has a unique combination of numbers. And when those numbers are put into the lock just the right way, we can open it. Much the same way, like we talked about, we have feelings and thoughts of every person that makes them unique. And here's the interesting thing about that, right? You may have a particular experience or thing that you've gone through that somebody else can relate to. And when you're vulnerable with, often it ends up being your pain, you actually enter one of the numbers into that lock. And as you do that, you don't realize that you've just entered one of the numbers, because a lot of times that person won't tell you that you just put in one of the numbers. All you know is that they had a nice conversation with you, you go on your merry way, and then the next person that person encounters may end up sharing something else with them that they can relate to, and all of a sudden now 2 out of 3 numbers have been entered into that combination lock. And some weeks, sometimes years later, another person may come along and say something, because they're open and vulnerable to that other person now, that now enters the 3rd number into that combination lock. And what's interesting is once that last number is put in, just like any lock, it opens. And so how does that translate to human beings? Well, every human being deals with something. We all have our struggles. We all have our pain. We've all been through things that make us scared or frustrated, or even maybe just makes us plain out close out sometimes. And another word for this could be bondage, right? Many of us are under some level of bondage. We want to open up, we want to be ourselves, and because we're under bondage, we cannot. And therefore, we can never be who we were authentically made to be, and make the impact on other people's lives that we were meant to make, simply because we were in bondage to whatever it was that was hurting us. But as I use my lock analogy, what you don't realize is that by being open and vulnerable with the people around you and sort of understanding or entering the key to their combination, you give people an opportunity to open up and realize that, even though when you're really, really close, you see just a bunch of numbers, or in people's cases, thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences that maybe you don't quite understand. But when you zoom out, we're all really just the same thing. We're locks. We're human beings. And human beings aren't really all that different from each other. We all have fears and doubts and worries and things that make us excited. But as we share our experiences and the unique things that make us up, and we're vulnerable enough to do that, we give people an opportunity to understand that they are not alone. And when they understand that they are not alone, what happens a lot of times is you free them from their bondage. And when those people become free from their bondage, when you unlock that combination lock to their lives, suddenly they are free to be their authentic selves, and you will never know the impact that they'll have on others' lives, and sometimes just because you were willing to be open and vulnerable with them. So today I want to challenge you to look for at least one person each day this week that you can be open and vulnerable with. Don't go to them trying to get something out of them. Just share something about your life. And again, you may never know the impact that you have, but I promise you that if you're open and vulnerable with people every day of your life, eventually you're going to see the impact of that, and I'm sure that you will experience joy when you discover the outcome of that. So be open, be vulnerable, have a salty week. Remember, it only takes a little bit of salt to make a huge impact. Y'all have a fantastic day.